Miss Ricky was not looking forward to this lesson in particular. She knew that once she covered all the cultural aspects of humanity, including vehicles, clothing, and so on, someone would ask about biology. The day before, one of the more aggravating opticians had brought up the subject at the end of the lesson, and the entire class had rallied behind her. To be fair, she was somewhat knowledgeable about human biology, but she had no intention of bringing it up in class. Miss Ricky blinked awake with. Her blurry, slitted eyes widened as the alarm sounded next to her nightstand. The clock, a vintage model GE from the 1990s, was being remade as part of the classics renaissance that was sweeping the globe at the time. To be honest, she despised it. When the appointed hour rolled around, it sounded like a skin-crawling klaxon, jolting her to her feet. This was just the beginning of her observations about humans. She couldn't help but notice that not all extraterrestrials possessed this peculiar habit. All the races she could think of had an innate alarm system that let them wake up at the exact moment they wanted. Humans, on the other hand, had internal clocks that were more like a bicycle without a wheel. Miss Ricky groaned, her face contorted in pain from the little alarm that kept rattling her skull with each beep. It was incredible that humans could sleep through both alarms and catastrophic events like car accidents, explosions, and... Miss Ricky moaned as she looked down at the human male clinging to her. Humans, for some reason, preferred cold temperatures when they slept, or at least a very high average. No one knew why. On the one hand, aliens loved warm, cozy rooms. On the other hand, humans would gladly turn the temperature down to nearly 62 degrees USF and snuggle under a blanket. Caden seemed to be no different. He clung to her as if he were attempting to subdue her, with one mused leg draped over her thighs and an arm wrapped around her ribs. Miss Rika, being Azra, required heat to remain warm. On space stations, she usually slept quite cold because the room was never warm enough. To compensate, Caden slept with a thick blanket, what humans call a duet, covering her. However, Caden was like a personal space heater. Humans generate a lot of body heat, which is probably why they like to sleep so cold. Miss Rika, being a heat sink for Caden, caused their usual morning of tangled limbs. As Miss Ricky had to gently remove Caden's flirtatious hands from her, she couldn't help but laugh every morning as she untangled herself from Caden and gently swatted his hands away. Humans, unlike most other sentient races in the Confederation, could be aroused at any hour of the day. In fact, many star citizens didn't even need to be awake for their motors to be running. People who study humans firmly believe that this peculiar trait is responsible for their ever-increasing population. Miss Ricky has experienced this phenomenon multiple times this week, even though she has had to rest and recharge before teaching her students. It's not her fault. Her strong will has brought her downfall in the form of human pheromones, which are most prevalent in the mornings when the body rests. This phenomenon has become so commonplace that not even humans, while some star citizens, having evolved from prey animals, are startled awake every morning by the overwhelming scent of a predator in their bedroom, while others, having evolved from predators, find their hearts racing and minds racing, but only for a moment, because no one seems to notice it anymore after hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. This meant that every morning, Miss Ricky and all the other star citizens, including herself, woke up to a pheromone-laden room. Another reason why it takes nearly 5 months for a star citizen to adapt to a human mate. On the other hand, male star citizens who hang out with female humans find mornings incredibly unpleasant. This discomfort has led to a coded message where male star citizens call in sick to let their bosses know they need a little more time to relax. Caden was no exception and might have been even worse as he reached over and smacked the alarm until it was silent. "Good morning, my little dragon." As Queen Riki narrowed her sleepy eyes and reached over to place her large clawed hand on Cadence's forehead, Caden let out a laugh and kissed her shoulder. With her weight on Caden, Riki was able to push back against his forehead, allowing Cadence to wiggle free. "I can't be late again, and you are the only reason I usually am," so I sighed from the bed. He was still partially wrapped in blankets, but he leaned on a strong hand as his blonde hair cascaded around his face in bedhead ringlets. "That's fine. I get to watch you go," Miss Riki said, her heart fluttering slightly as she raised a scaled iris to look over his shoulder. The morning light shone down on him, casting a gentle glow on his pale skin. Suddenly, she heard a sharp click from the living room bar, and she would have been distracted if it weren't for the coffee maker gurgling to remind her she had a job to do. As Miss Riki put on her jeans and sweater, she inhaled deeply, savoring the aroma of roasted coffee beans. Humans are known to be addicted to caffeine, which causes them to feel jittery and out of control. We humans have a remarkable command of this stimulant, and it's probably one of the reasons Earth is as. The nations of South America were elevated to a power comparable to the United States and the European coalition, thanks to the coffee bean. However, the scientists were confounded and furious that the plants would only grow on Earth. The Nemi were also confused by the finicky plant. The United States was courting the South American countries to join their coalition, and fields upon fields of coffee plants stretched along what was known as the bean belt. Earth was under a stranglehold. Regarding the production and market value of coffee, Miss Riki and Azra loved it, the darker the better, and it always perked her up. However, the Ural and the Carians, who loved the flavor of coffee but could only handle a single cup of light roast, they got the jitters easily, but that just meant they got more bang for their buck. Unlike the Zamara and Pa, if a Ural or a Karen ingested too much coffee, they suffered from severe intestinal distress, which could even lead to death, just like Miss Riki. As Miss Riki sipped from her coffee canister, she felt Caden's strong arms encircle her waist and pull her sweater down over her hips. Caden mumbled something under his breath, but Miss Riki scoffed and smacked him on the hands. "No stars. No way. How are you so active when you're barely awake?" To prove it, she reached out and jabbed Caden in the stomach, sending him back to the dungeon from whence he had emerged. The irony was clear to both of them, and they couldn't help but giggle and laugh. Jabbing Caden with a long spoon and directing him to the bathroom so he could take a shower were her strategies for escaping her HAB unit. With plenty of time to spare, she arrived at her classroom ahead of schedule and began preparing the day's lessons. She had to be creative because she knew the kinds of questions her students would ask, but she had to keep them to herself. In the middle of her cantinas, the first students arrived, and it was the yellow Ipel, as usual. Rira and the black Yaltinal greeted each other with a light wave of her fronds as Miss Riki said good morning. Tinel grinned and grumbled, "You're in for a rough one today, teacher. I wouldn't be surprised if you end up brain zapping a few people within the first hour." After class, the entire class gathered in the cantina to come up with questions to ask Rira. Ramira rolled her eyes and pulled up her own cantina stir, which was full of a carrot juice blend. "I hope you weren't planning on having a good day, too." Miss Riki tilted her head and sighed. "Oh, I'm sure they'll all be here in no time at all, babbling away like songbirds. My sister told me about them." Ramir, with her buttery yellow head fur fluffing out, pondered the question, "Are they really singing with the sunrise?" Fren assured her that they do, and Tinel muttered something under her breath as she sat next to her. RIR chuckled, and our birds just screamed and sang. Why can't we talk about fun stuff like that today? I have an entire Miss Riki to attend to, but let's not waste any more time. As the two students exchanged knowing glances, Miss Ricky simply shook her head in disapproval. Just as she was finishing up the commands for her slides, the rest of the class arrived, and for the first time since she had taught them, everyone sat quietly. "Oh, you all are keen, aren't you?" Miss Ricky said dryly, getting up from her desk and smoothing down her jeans. She liked jeans, and these were quite advanced, made with some material. With the exception of the masked Jin, who merely offered her a cheery thumbs up with one of their forearms, all of her students responded with wide smiles. "Splendid," she said to herself, before tapping the pad of her finger to the thick muscle of her thumb. Suddenly, the large screen came to life, displaying a volleyball match between men and women of diverse skin colors. The cheers from the students were overwhelming, and everyone except Tinel and Romero seemed to be. The two students were prepared for the inevitable pain that would be unleashed upon them as Miss Ricky imposed her will on the class. Thankfully, they kept quiet. "It is more than enough," Miss Ricky said firmly, her tail whacking against her desk. The entire class raised an angry hand or claw to their heads, muttering angrily to those sitting next to them. Miss Ricky then rose to her feet and stood in front of the class. "So, all of you want to know about human biology? I mean to teach you about it in a very professional way, so I'm expecting you to ask me professional questions too." Miss Ricky started by pointing to the screen, explaining that humans evolved from a predator race, which gave them a muscular build similar to other predators like the Zamara Ural and the Carlin. To keep healthy, humans need to move around and exercise, because otherwise they can gain weight and lose their shape. When she went to the next slide, she tapped her thumb again, and there were two very overweight people trundling around. A powder blue female Ural raised a pod hand and Miss Ricky raised her scaled brow ridges as they walked along a park walkway. Just like any other race, they can gain weight if they eat too much and don't exercise enough. The humans in this group can be anywhere from very short, approaching 4 feet 6 inches, to very tall, over 7 feet in US units. Yes, the Ural leaned in toward her classmates, who nodded in agreement, before she lowered her hand and asked, "What is the human?" Miss Ricky whispered to herself, then regained her authoritative tone. "Asthma," she said, "is a pheromone released by humans while they sleep. Humans aren't as affected by it as other races in the Confederation, or at least not to the same extent. The PO gene and NIM have had the most severe reactions to this pheromone so far, either waking up or fleeing in a panic from the room it's in. They've had to learn to adapt to being around humans, which has been described as far more animalistic." Miss Ricky tapped her fingers along her hand, drawing an image of a human snoozing in a hammock. "In any case, the pheromone has been. It has been said that even when they are sleeping, they cause quite a bit of chaos on ships." "Why is this?" Powder blue Ural asked curiously, tapping the tips of her claws together. Miss Ricky considered giving Yul another zap, but she decided to keep her professional air for non-pre-race events instead. The experience was energizing. She had to take a few deep breaths herself as the memories flooded back, causing her skin to tingle slightly. Is capable of waking up a star citizen from a deep sleep, causing their heart rate to increase, blood to rush through their veins, and their brain to spin so rapidly that it has been known to jolt them awake. It also causes their stomachs to flutter and their skin to sweat, and if all of that isn't enough, it can transport them to a world where they feel alive like never before. Using a prey legacy, Miss Ricky thought to herself, "Oh my goodness." She returned to her slideshow of humans, explaining that, despite lacking fur scales and other protective coverings, humans are incredibly strong and displayed in their various body types. To illustrate this point, She enlarged the slides to show a male and female representing each of the three commonly accepted human body types: weak, middling, and peak. First, there's the triangle human. Regardless of the numerous low whistles and giggles from her students, this particular human standard stands out. Its musculature is clearly defined, and it has an ideal ratio of muscle to fat. Secondly, there is a subset of humans known as oval humans. Miss Ricky introduced a male and female of this type to the class, and the reaction was quite interesting. Some students widened their eyes in fear, while others widened their eyes for a completely different reason, even smiling. Oval humans also tend to have a higher. They tend to put on weight, have more muscle, and are simply wider than the average person. These people are common and usually found lifting heavy objects. On the other hand, triangles and ovals are always fighting, which has been likened to tribalistic bickering over physical strength and attractiveness. Ovals and triangles are typically the slowest humans, so they excel at sprinting but struggle with longer distances because of their weight. Lastly, there are rectangles, which, as Miss Ricky pointed out, look. The male PO mentioned that he had been taking notes the whole time, and Miss Ricky smiled quietly. Rectangle humans are athletic, perhaps even more so than triangle humans. They are thin, fast, and agile, and they excel in sports that don't require a lot of strength. Human muscle is dense with tightly woven strands of corded muscle, and how strong it is debatable, but there are things we witnessed during the Darrier War that still haunt us. Curious about many things, she tapped her thumb on her computer, bringing up a slightly blurry image of a human ripping a Dar warrior in half. The class gasped in shock as Miss Ricky adjusted her sweater. It seems that humans are naturally restrained by their brains, which allows them to use all of their muscles to their maximum potential. This much is known and accepted from recorded and studied human history. Women can only use up to 70% of their maximum strength, and there have been videos of them lifting entire vehicles off their children using their hysterical strength alone. Warrior men have been known to go ballistic, ripping their enemies to shreds or even ripping off their limbs. The Dai aren't the only ones who suffer from unbridled human strength when it comes to fight or flight situations. Both Dan and the Mandarines have been discovered in a similar state of decomposition, crushed, or broken bones, as a result of the humans' attempts to rob them. The Mandarines are still reeling from the shock of fighting humans in close quarters, and the adrenaline rush is draining their energy. Tragically, human warriors have been found dozing off on the battlefield, exhausted to the point where they pass out. Miss Ricky's voice perked up as she transitioned to a new slide, bringing the class out of their collective shock and wonder. On a lighter note, it's interesting to note that humans have a unique ability to generate a significant amount of heat. In fact, our bodies run so hot that most bacteria and viruses are effectively cooked alive by them. Only the most localized microbes on Earth manage to infiltrate our bodies. This explains why many of us need to take injections on a regular basis, and why opticians must consume nanic scrubbers to produce. I feel like I have gotten more injections on this station than I have in my entire life. It is a requirement. I am afraid humans are extremely steadfast little buggers when it comes to infections, and they have bred some of the fiercest microbes to make sure our bodies do not fall victim to Earth and pathogens. Jen asked, anxiously raising two of her hands past her mask, which was modeled after an Ern wolf. She had to steady herself from the earlier revelation. Since we have a firm grasp on medical science, we have managed to avoid releasing a slew of plagues onto other planets. The station came dangerously close to a smallpox outbreak a few times afterward, but thankfully, the number of fatalities was low thanks to the dedicated medical staff on staff. Many people think that humans are overly eager to kill anything that gets inside of them and overly cautious about letting themselves go down. As her students whispered to each other, Miss Ricky tapped on her thumb muscle. Imagine a human woman peacefully resting on her bed. As mentioned earlier, humans release pheromones during sleep. However, unlike us, they also sleep during the day on their home planet. Humans, despite eating enough calories, can still feel the need for what they call cat naps, or short naps that give them energy and refresh their brains. It's interesting that no other race can do this, including humans. Completed a full cycle. In fact, the only known napping creatures all live on Earth. A small rodent-like creature from Mulan won't nap like an earthling would. Instead, it will stay awake until it sleeps. This ability is thought to be a crucial part of human dominance on the battlefield, where humans can take a short nap when they're tired and be back at it in no time. The Dimir, on the other hand, had to complete full cycles and would even try to stay awake to fight humans, whom they knew. While the humans were preparing to attack, the Dimir was too tired to nap. Instead, they tried to prolong their already lengthy sleep cycle. A male optician asked, "Are you suggesting that their superpower is microsleep?" with a bewildered expression on his face. "What does a nap feel like?" "You can find out if you take some human pheromones," Miss Reiki said with a wink. The class burst out laughing, and a female student hissed and giggled before holding the dagger. While Carlin rested her lizard-like head on her clawed hands, Miss Ricky tapped at her, saying, "You cannot be serious." "I'm quite serious. The only time other races have been able to experience naps is when they are near other napping humans. Of course, they have to combat all the other feelings that may arise, but if they master themselves, they can experience a short sleeping cycle, or the human nap." Pom was unaware that the person drinking coffee on the screen was actually Caden until the slide showed him. It's a valid question, and the only reasonable explanation is that humans love to consume poisons, stimulants, and minerals that make us feel different. Before, we thought the Nimi were the outcasts in our midst, but now we see how much we abuse substances like caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, cannabinoids, cocaine, opium, and capsaicin. Dissociate or simply indulge in junk food, humans are among the most prolific stargazers in the galaxy right now. Their bodies are so strong that they can easily consume stimulants from other races. Miss Mickey was about to continue naming some of the most popular human stimulants when she saw a raised hand and turned to see what it was. "I just got an alert that there will be a station emergency drill in about 20 minutes, and those always drag on for what seems like an eternity. Will we have to end class early because of this?" A female point ran her finger along the tabletop and asked, "Hey, you know what? We're going to ask you about the rumors about their mating rituals." A male Ural spoke up about the links, how they have affected the Confederation, how it made the Zra rather angry, and why you're taking human mids. Mid said, "Yes, all right," and Miss Ricky tried to act dumb by raising her scaled eyebrow ridges and tilting her head. As she prepared to show the class the slides, a group of silent nods indicated their agreement. On one slide, a curvaceous woman in lingerie, and on the other, a muscular man in shorts, gave the impression that they were already famous in the class. Despite this, everyone remained silent, each reacting in their own way. The Eipel's fur floated out a fair distance, and Carlin's hoods drooped in an embarrassed. In an effort to hide their faces, the point all turned red, revealing freckles on their skin. The Opticin were the most outspoken, their feathers poofing out in shame, while the Gene remained composed and collected, fidgeting with their masks occasionally. Humans are naturally aggressive hunters, but when we're not fighting, we transform into admirers, our body language changing subtly but noticeably. On the whole, we're very sociable and open about the humans are technically more advanced than us, and they fight a biological war. Miss Ricky started to calm herself by taking deep breaths, but all it did was make her think of Caden and how humans bring out the worst in each other. The most popular human saying is all is fair, love, and war, and humans are equally good at both fields. Miss Ricky slowly began to show the slides. This lesson will take you through 50 different aspects of human courtship. The Zamra were easily manipulated by touch, taste, sight, and hearing, which is a biological response. The Zamra leadership was enraged by this, as is the fact that there is a new problem with the Zamra smuggling themselves to Earth, but that is not part of this lesson. The most obvious aspect is that humans will initiate emotional combat through pure body language. People will use their fingers to communicate in ways that we can't fathom. Centuries ago, we left that kind of touching behind. Now, we initiate touch in ways that no one can comprehend: a gentle tap on the shoulder, a fingertip to the chin or lips, a delicate touch to the hip, and even Confederation scholars believe that half of human language is silently derived from these parts of the body. Pray to human touch alone. In some mysterious way, they know just how to touch, caress, stroke, or brush us to elicit a reaction. How they do this is a mystery, but it seems innate, as if they can see us at our most primal level and understand what to do. Some scholars have speculated that human flesh is biologically weaponized, due to the distinctive ridges on human skin, which many see as a weapon. This has caused significant problems for the Al-Zamra, Karlan, and Apan communities. On certain stations, humans are not allowed to touch these races for fear of unintentionally seducing star citizens. Even officials have been smitten by strong handshakes and eye contact, leading them to become overly lenient during negotiations. Additionally, humans will engage in psychological warfare for affections, buying meaningful gifts and hugging as a form of intimacy. Miss Ricky pointed to the display and warned that humans are dangerous because once they have you in their arms, there's no getting out. She coughed up an egg from her morning ordeal. Hugs have different meanings depending on whether they're horizontal, around the waist, or around the neck. A simple diagonal hug is a friend greeting, but a horizontal hug indicates that the person likes you more. Her students were engrossed in taking notes as she continued speaking. It's important to note that these hugs have the same effect on humans as they do on animals. For example, if an animal's arms go around your neck, it's considered a friendly gesture. However, if those arms go south, it's seen as a sign of aggression. Lastly, a rear-facing hug, regardless of its direction, is considered a dangerous display of intense affection. When you approach a human by the neck or waist, it sends a message that you see them as a possible mate. If they're interested, they'll treat you nicely. However, if they're not, it can be awkward, but humans are good at being polite about it. The most dangerous hug is the one from behind. If you haven't established trust and affection, it's like hugging a bear or earthworm. You're likely to get mauled for your troubles. And what about that thing? After receiving instruction from human smugglers Ural May, Jen enthusiastically called out while waving all four of her hands in the air. The kissing thing that they showed the Nikki, Miss Ricky said, her smile spreading across her face. The study about kissing had been illuminating, and she couldn't seem to shake the memory of Caden's lessons. Humans, on the other hand, may nuzzle their cheeks together and touch their brows together when they love one another. The third human language is the action of pressing the lips to a part of the body. A kiss to the cheek is considered friendly, and a kiss to the forehead is a way to show care. The rest of the body has an entire manual of arms when it comes to a kiss, but Miss Ricky pointed to her own lips. A kiss here means one thing and one thing only: a human likes you. This is important to keep in mind when interacting with humans. Human lips, like fingers, are a biological weapon. Studies have shown that people's reactions to kisses can be detected by monitoring devices. Some believe that humans use pathokinesis when kissing. It can calm, excite, seduce, or even make you fight harder than you thought you could. The most common type of kiss, though, is a loving kiss, which is a way for humans to show their affection for others. Miss Ricky giggled and said, "Yes, a timer for a quick kiss. It's just a simple display, but if you linger for more than a second, you unlock different pathways." This is when human pathokinesis kicks in. If you or the other person lingers, they'll turn their head to the left or right, as if turning a key, and their lips will combine. At this point, you've gotten past the locks and are in what can be considered combat if either of you pulls away. Charming and playful, but if you maintain your lips together, humans will turn their heads once more, passing the third lock. They may embrace you, wrap their arms around you, and occasionally even press their tongue into your mouth. A male optician spluttered, feathers rustling with distaste, but Miss Ricky muttered to herself, continuing on in a dominant manner. At this point, you are now in the beginning stages of a coupling. If one of you pulls away, the other will likely follow suit. They are probably angry or irritated because you are trying to dominate the situation, whether it's with another human or another human trying to control you. I'm not joking when I say that for them. Human courting and coupling is like combat. There's dominance, submissiveness, and tally keeping even here. They could be angry because it's a buzzkill, as Tinkle pointed out, who has been sitting with her chin on her arms the whole time and listening intently as Miss Ricky speaks. You get all fired up for nothing, even hate, chips. That a male Carrie spoke up next. Is it true about the wrestling? Laughter echoed through the room, sending a flutter through Miss Ricky's chest as she declared, coolly, her enormous heart thumping loudly against her rib cage. As you all know, the Confederation and other spacefaring races view mating as a polite necessity for procreation. Sometimes it's even faceless depending on the planet, rather than a deposit of genetic material. It has been observed that entire marriages have crumbled because one partner becomes too lazy or lackluster, leading the other to seek out a better partner. The Juan of the Shash Shout Ring have abandoned physical mating and even birth in favor of nurturing their young in great nurseries. However, humans do not adhere to this belief system. Mating is just as fierce as their combat prowess. You can see various parts of human mating on display, but we'll focus on the part where humans bite, claw, and muscle each other. Some scholars find this behavior horrifyingly violent, while others find it charming and pure. Unfortunately, death is a common occurrence during human mating. Listen up, everyone. Humans, in all their male and female glory, have unintentionally broken and killed other races' attempts at mating. I can't stress this enough, because humans are massive, powerful beings with strength you can't even begin to fathom. What's more, if you aren't careful, you could die during mating itself. And let's not forget that none of us have any immunity to the human diseases that can be transmitted through mating, like syphilis, which has claimed the lives of hundreds of star citizens. If you're still not convinced that humans are tough, consider this. Within 3 days of infection, if left untreated, humans can survive for up to 20 years. Ty Hawkswain and the Wandering Flesh were both recorded catching the disease. When a female optician asked how long it took for them to die, Ricky flatly replied that their bodies simply chewed up the disease and spit it back out without any negative effects. Now let's turn our attention back to their musculature. You might find some interesting things about their elbows and hand bones, like their. Friend stood before Specialist Rayburn's living quarters, her mind racing with possibilities. She had meticulously reviewed the regulations, which stated that as long as both parties were within 3 ranks of each other, they could mingle without additional paperwork. She scrutinized every detail of her uniform and mustard yellow fur, and she rummaged through her small bag, finding snacks and drinks. Rumor had it that human women enjoyed sweets, so she had snatched them from the commissary. After a movie night with Corporal Radique, where they hung out on the bed, ate snacks, talked, and then went their separate ways, Fren wanted to see if male and female humans were the same, so she pressed the hailing button, stood back, and tilted her head to reveal a cooler of beer. They had a good time and laughed at the movie, but now she wanted to know if they were really that similar. The door slid open with a hiss of actuators, revealing Specialist Rayburn, all smiles, wearing jogging shorts and a white tank top that didn't hide her tan skin and well-muscled limbs. "You arrived wearing your uniform. We're off rotation for the next round." She couldn't understand what the other female Ural were talking about when it came to male humans. They were simply not as attractive as the females. After teasing Fren for what seemed like an eternity, Rayburn finally stepped back to let her in. "Come on, you dork," Rayburn said. "I found an old digital copy of Mulan that I think you'll like." Fren was confused as to why her heart was racing, but Rayburn gave her an odd look and Fren could feel her tail wagging behind her. "All right, is it a war movie?" Rayburn asked, laughing as she closed the hatch behind Fren.